Grand Prix season. 71 laps around this circuit. And John, it's going to be a very interesting race, because not only what's going to happen on fuel stops and tyre stops, but what is going to happen with the weather.
Well, we have got the mayor of Sao Paulo explaining to us what a lovely country we have here in Brazil, and what beautiful weather in Brazil also. And directly above us, as opposed to, well, there you see there in the background the grey clouds that again are gathering over Interlagos. And in fact, wet weather has been forecast for, not just for the Grand Prix, in fact for the whole day. That hasn't been the case so far, but the weather, unfortunately, I'm sure is going to play another major role in the outcome of a Brazilian Grand Prix.
On the grid, 26 cars, 26 drivers, and a lot of very nervous mechanics, John. When I was walking down the pits earlier on, and most of the mechanics, maybe it's because it's the first race, maybe because of a lot of unknown quantities, but a lot of people are, let's say, nervous.
Well, I believe there's a lot for them to be, I think apprehensive is probably what they're feeling more than just nervousness. But we've got a new start to a Grand Prix season. There are a number of new people, of course, joining teams, and for them this is the first time in rail. The main concern obviously is going to be with the strategy, and every team has kept very close to its own chest what they are in fact going to do. And I would not be surprised to see very shortly after the start of a race somebody taking the chance on a very short first run. It's generally considered to be a 3-stop Grand Prix, and that's part of the reason why there's apprehension.
The front row of the grid, his 63rd pole position, Ayrton Senna, with Michael Schumacher equaling his best qualifying performance. The second row of the grid, John Alesi and Damon Hill, then Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Gianni Morbidelli. So that's an interesting top 6. Carl Wendlinger and Mika Häkkinen, 7th and 8th. And then Jos Verstappen, his first Grand Prix in the Benetton Ford, alongside Ukio Katayama, Christian Fittipaldi and Mark Blundell. On the next row, then it is Eric Gomez and Rubens Barrichello. Behind those two, we find Pierluigi Martini and Eddie Irvine. Gerhard Berger, a disappointing qualifying session on Friday and Saturday, but this morning went a little better, alongside Martin Brundle. Then it's a Ligier row of Oliver Panis and Eric Bernard, and they're followed by Johnny Herbert and Michele Alboreto, who was disappointed that it started to rain yesterday because he thought he could have been higher up the grid. The last row, Bertrand Gachot and Gary Brabham, making it 1 car apiece for the new Pacific and Simtech teams here in Brazil.
Well, just to reinforce Michele Alboreto's views about Saturday qualifying, he in fact was 3rd quickest this morning in his Minardi Ford, and he's looking forward to obviously a Grand Prix where experience, and that's what certainly Michele Alboreto has plenty of, will play its part. Equally happy where the Footwork Ford team with Gianni Morbidelli and Christian Fittipaldi. And I talked to Alan Jenkins, the designer of this footwear car, and he said, isn't it wonderful to have 2 young drivers in a team who are both quick? So the pleasure in the team, obvious for all to see.
Well, John, and also Mark Blundell, a very happy man. He was 4th fastest during the morning warm-up, and he said, well, we actually fixed the problem. We were quick here on Friday morning, and we found the rear diffuser having a couple of problems. Some things broke off it, and they didn't see it, or they didn't notice it anyway. But Mark says, we found a problem, and I'm looking for a very good race. The only problem for Mark, as for Michele, is that they're quite a long way back on the grid.
Well, a couple of people this morning felt that Tyrrell's have a very good chance of certainly getting into the points. 2 cars that have been quick, proved fairly reliable throughout the 2 days of practice and qualifying. And of course, the kind of strategy one might expect from the Tyrrell team could be different from that of the majority of others.
The grid. All 26 cars have started. I can't see anyone that stopped from the dummy grid, and now it's a warm-up lap, and then we stop on the grid proper, and then it's 71 laps. Last year's winner, of course, Ayrton Senna on pole position. Damon Hill then finished 2nd, Schumacher 3rd, Johnny Herbert 4th, Mark Blundell 5th, and Alessandro Zanardi in 6th position. Well, last year's race, we all remember, it started to rain very heavily indeed.
Well, rain is always a problem here, but there's another problem. Look at the amount of paper that's being allowed to blow onto the track. This is coming from the spectator areas. Traditionally, paper gets onto the circuit here at an early stage in the race, and of course that gets into the radiator boxes that support and hold the radiators themselves. Overheating is a major worry for some of the teams. Maybe possible during pit stops for one of the team members to put his hand into those boxes, drag out any debris, rubber, paper, something teams are going to think about.
And then I think we can have a guess, John, who's going to be the first man to make a pit stop. Well, I know fairly sure that the Sauber team is planning on a one-stop race, and so is the Lotus team.
Sauber, I think, are doing it because they only have one refueling rig, in fact, so it would be difficult for them to do more than one per car. My bet is that either a Ferrari or a Benetton Ford, possibly Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren Peugeot, those are my three nominees, let's say, for a stop somewhere between lap 12 and 15, whereas the average are probably going to go through to somewhere around lap 20 to 25. An early stop may well give people an advantage. It may well be the way to win the race. But of course, the one factor that nobody's going to be able to control, and that is the weather.
The cars lining up on the grid, and then for the first time, and we're going to have 15 times to follow, there'll be a green flag, a 5-second board, and then the lights we can see in the middle of our screen will change from red to green.
Well, a very tense moment indeed, and Ayrton Senna's got his mirrors full of a red Ferrari of Jean Alesi, and that's a somewhat daunting prospect because to his left he's got Michael Schumacher, and these two men are known for their lack of consideration, let's say, into first corners. They're not going to show any respect to Senna whatsoever, and it's crucial for pole position man to secure his position into that first corner. Otherwise, you'll be swamped, and well, as we saw last year, very easily out of the race.
All 26 cars are stationary. In the back of our screen, we see the green flag. The 5-second board just on the right is up. First gear is engaged. Revs are up. The red light is on, and it's all go. And a very good start from Gerhard Berger. A very good start and a very bad start from Michael Schumacher. Ayrton Senna leads Jean Alesi. Then it's Schumacher and Damon Hill. That is the situation. And look at Carl Wendlinger and Heinz-Harald Frentzen. They're fighting over 5th position. But Ayrton Senna leads Jean Alesi, and I think that's what he wanted. Everybody safely round the first corner, but what a start. And what a start from Berger, look at it.
Tremendous start from Gerhard Berger all the way back, and he came out of the box like a greyhound, and well, he's used his experience and the power of the Ferrari. Now also that may just be due to the fact that Ferrari have chosen to put Berger on a light fuel load rather than Jean Alesi. That kind of performance on an opening lap is not normal. That indicates to me something is slightly different on Berger's Ferrari.
Well, Gerhard Berger had a blinding start last year, remember, but then didn't really make it around the first corner when he had an indiscretion with Michael Andretti. But Jean Alesi will do everything he knows to hold up Michael Schumacher, and Schumacher going around the inside, and Alesi is retaking that. Oh, that's proper motor racing there.
Well, this is going to be real motor racing, because as they come up to the end of the pit straight, watch for Schumacher trying to slide underneath Jean Alesi, but he will be ready for him, and he isn't close enough.
Ayrton Senna leads Jean Alesi at the end of lap 1. Then it is Michael Schumacher in 3rd position, Damon Hill, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 5th, Mika Hakkinen, Carl Wendlinger, and that is the situation. But what a first lap it was.
And Schumacher very, very eager indeed to get Jean Alesi behind him, because he knows the longer he's behind Alesi, the longer, well, the greater the contact to Ayrton Senna is going to be. But again, up the hill, the Ferrari power of that car pulled it away from the Benetton Ford. In the meantime, Senna has got a clear track ahead of him. He's able to drive at his own pace. and pace it is what he will be doing.
And behind that we saw Heinz-Harald Frentzen fighting with Mika Häkkinen over 5th place. But that is the fight we're going to watch. And look at Senna opening up a gap. And again, Michael Schumacher goes to the inside. And now he's got it covered. He's got 2nd place from Jean Alesi.
And in reality, there wasn't an awful lot of resistance from Alesi in that situation. But again, the speed of the Ferrari in the straight. Look, now that is not just horsepower. Oh, and Schumacher chopped the nose of Alesi's Ferrari absolutely without any mercy whatsoever.
Jean, undoubtedly not being a very happy Frenchman.
Well, Alan, all I can say is, what's the difference between a rock and a hard place? You saw it there. Michael Schumacher was as hard as I've seen any driver in a Grand Prix since Senna and Prost at the British Grand Prix last year.
The man that has not made a blinding first lap is Mark Blundell in 14th place, and Martin Brundle is currently behind him. Oh, he was anyway in 16th position. And Gerhard Berger is up to 8th place, just in front of Jos Verstappen, and carrying on his good performance in those early laps. So Senna, Schumacher, but the gap between those two is already 4 seconds.
The question, I think, is what strategy have the Williams-Renault team adopted? Senna's pulling away with a lot more ease than one would have expected from the relative performances of the Benetton and the Williams over 2 days of practice and qualifying. I expressed a view about what I thought Benetton might do. I didn't think that Williams would go for, let's say, a radical structure, a radical race setup, but Senna comfortably now over 4 seconds in the lead from Schumacher, who's pulled out a further 4 seconds from Jean Alesi, who's got a couple of seconds advantage on Damon Hill.
First retirement of the race is Bertrand Gachot, who stopped somewhere on the circuit with the Pacific Grand Prix, the Omer engine, so a very short debut for that team. John, the one that's sitting there fairly comfortable is Damon Hill, who's now got Mika Häkkinen right behind him, who's gone past Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and behind those two is a queue of drivers with Wendlinger, Berger, Verstappen, Barrichello and Gianni Morbidelli.
Well, I wouldn't say Damon's exactly comfortable. I think he would like to be ahead of Alesi and certainly ahead of Schumacher. And the pressure he's got from behind with Häkkinen, Frentzen, Wendlinger and Berger isn't going to make his life comfortable.
Ayrton Senna completes lap 4 out of 71. And we're on board. You can see the speed on the right of your screen. And Michael Schumacher is actually closing the gap a little bit. He's half a second on this lap. The gap now 3.8 seconds between leader Ayrton Senna. We're riding with him in the Williams-Renault, and Michael Schumacher in 2nd place. Those two in a class of their own. Next man is Jean Alesi back in the 120s, and then it's Damon Hill, the first driver, in the 121s. Now, John, could that be, for instance, that Ayrton might plan 2 stops and Damon might plan 1?
I would imagine that they're going to go for that type of strategy. I think it would be 3 stops and 2 stops rather than 2 and 1. I think that most of the front-running teams have worked out that the problem in the race is not going to be fuel, it's going to be how you use your tyres. And Schumacher's had to use his tyres very hard indeed in the early opening laps to get past Jean Alesi. He's now pushing extremely hard to close that gap on Ayrton Senna. So it's going to be tyre performance. But people really don't know, they had to second guess, I feel, what they think will happen in the race. And remember, this track was washed clean yesterday. It's a green racetrack this afternoon.
Ayrton Senna leads Michael Schumacher, Jean Alesi, Damon Hill, Mika Häkkinen and Heinz-Harald Frentzen here in Brazil. We're back after the break here on Eurosport. Welcome welcome back from Brazil. You're back with race leader Ayrton Senna, just completing his 7th lap. And there is the gap with Michael Schumacher, and that gap is getting less and less. Schumacher, another fastest lap of the race on the lap before, and on this lap, oh, we got to wait for the computer to tell us, but I wouldn't be surprised. Another fastest lap, 1:18.4. And the gap now 2.5 seconds between this man, Michael Schumacher, with 2 Grand Prix victories to his credit, and the man that's been 3 times world champion and 41 victories, Ayrton Senna.
Well, Benetton have been playing the tyre game very close to their chest throughout the weekend. They've been trying to save tyres as much as possible. Their car out of these slow corners throughout the weekend has been the most impressive indeed. They seem to have traction where everybody else is claiming they have no traction at all. And now we have seen visually, and there, one of the 2, the Roos Ford, being towed off the circuit or onto the grass. And this is the 3rd retirement. As we see, yes, Pedron Gachot and one of the 2 Larousses have made contact somewhere. In the meantime, Senna up across the line, ending his 8th lap. And is that gap any smaller?
Senna going into the S's, a steep downhill section. And Michael Schumacher's lap 8. Was it quicker than Senna? Well, 0.2 of a second, a 19.2 and a 19.0. So the gap, 2.4 seconds. Then it's Jean Alesi and Damon Hill. Mika Häkkinen, Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Carl Wendlinger. That is the top 7 at the end of lap 8 with Jos Verstappen in 8th and Rubens Barrichello in 9th position. Another retirement we saw a couple of minutes ago during our commercial break. Driving into the pit very slowly was Gerhard Berger. He is out of this year's Brazilian Grand Prix with an engine that wasn't running on 12 cylinders.
Well, there looked to be a little bit of oil and smoke from the back of Berger's car. But certainly he was electric in those opening laps, and it does make me very suspicious indeed that that car may have had an extremely low amount of fuel on board. But we're now approaching the point where I suspect if Williams, Benetton particularly, have done something tricky in regards to their strategy. We're going to soon find out. This is the end of the 9th lap, and I would imagine that within the next 3, if either are prepared to take the early pit stop, it's going to come then.
Alesi crossing the line, and Senna just edging away a little bit, a 1/10 of a second from Michael Schumacher. And Jean Alesi here in a very lonely 3rd place. He's some 12 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, and he's, as we can see, quite a long way ahead, some 4 seconds ahead of Damon Hill, who's now beginning to speed up a little, now maybe trying to finding his rhythm.
Well, he's got Mika Häkkinen behind him, and that gap at 1.3 seconds. So Damon, whatever his reasons, whatever the problems he's having this afternoon, appear to just be a continuation of the pain he's had to go through all weekend.
Well, Senna completing another lap. It's hello and welcome to Roland Ratzenberger, walking into our commentary booth. Roland, who would have liked to be out there, of course, doing his lap, as his teammate David Brabham. But I think, Roland, you're very happy to be in Formula One anyway.
I'm very happy, but I'm quite disappointed that I'm not in the race today. But we had a lot of bad luck over the qualifying days. And especially yesterday, I mean, nothing went our way, so we just missed the cut, really.
Simtek, a very small team. Where do you think they'll end up sort of once the season gets underway?
No, I mean, the team is doing a very good job. I mean, with the financial possibilities we have and with the time available, they did a fantastic job to come here and to prepare the cars the way they prepared them. And yesterday, really on my car, we just had a small problem on a rear damper, and by the time we fixed it, the rain came out, and So that was really our problem qualifying yesterday. So, but the team it's a lot of good guys in there. Basically everybody is very good, and they're doing a fantastic job. And I'm sure we're gonna go a long way during the season.
Well, just looking at the screen, the gap between Senna and Schumacher down to 1.8 seconds at the end of the 10th lap. This is the 11th lap they're coming up to complete. But Roland, you've spent a number of years in Formula 3000 in Japan in sports cars. You're driving in Grand Prix racing these days, and slightly different type of car, and the braking, I gather, sort of kind of caught your attention.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest single difference between anything I've driven before is just the braking power these cars have. I mean, with the carbon brakes combined with the very low weight of the Formula 1 and the downforce, you can just brake so late. It's quite incredible. And it's a certain technique you have to learn, and I'm getting there lap by lap. I'm improving, so, but it's something every new driver has to go through in Formula 1.
John Alesi in third position. A wonderful qualifying lap. I mean, he even surprised the teams. And John, the gap between Senna and Schumacher, the lap before it was 1.8 seconds. Now it's up to 2.3, nearly 2.4 seconds again. I've got a feeling Ayrton's got it under control.
Looks very much the case. He just suddenly went half a second a lap faster than he'd done previously. Schumacher's lap time had been approximately the same. Senna just opened that extra gap back up again, and it really looks as if he's very comfortable indeed. And he's almost playing with Schumacher, though for me the gap between them anywhere less than 5 or 8 seconds is far too close to allow yourself to play with somebody who is as dangerous a competitor as Michael Schumacher, or for that matter the Benetton Ford, which currently is very fast.
The gap, well, virtually unchanged, identical lap times there, and this could, well, the way it's going, this could well be a race decided by pit stops and strategy.
Well, we're on lap 13, so we have to wait and see whether my prophecies of early pit stops is going to be an accurate one, or I've totally misjudged it. But we certainly are in that area where those opportunities are available.
Heinz-Harald Frentzen making his debut. We know he's going to go for one stop. Frentzen out-qualifying Carl Wendlinger and currently running just in front of the Austrian. Well, there's 3 Austrians who could qualify for a Grand Prix. That's more than there's been for a very long time.
It's almost as many as Irishmen, isn't it, Allard?
Senna at the end of lap 13, a lap he completed in 1:18.964, and there's David Brabham letting Ayrton Senna pass, looking in his mirror, very good, and the gap is 2.1 seconds now. Well, we'll see position 7 to 12 on our screen, and Martin Brundle, who had a difficult weekend, John, slowly making his way up.
Well, I think Martin really wants to see this Grand Prix as a result in terms of getting to the end, and that's obviously the case for both the McLaren Peugeots. But starting so far back, and he wasn't able to emulate the electric start that we saw from Gerhard Berger. So Martin, more prudent in 12th place, just under a second behind Eddie Irvine in his Sassel Jordan.
And that's the end of Mika Häkkinen's race. The car being pushed back into the garage. Well, he might come out later, but it's definitely, well, let's say definitely no points for Häkkinen, John. It looks very much like a retirement. Ayrton Senna. And it looked like the gap was increasing a little to Michael Schumacher again, who is still in second place, ahead of Jean Alesi, Damon Hill, Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Carl Wendlinger in 6th position. We're back here on Eurosport after the break. Martin Brundle is coming into the pits, and this looks very much like a regular pit stop. We see the fuel being put in New tyres on the car. The stop is finished and Martin on his way again. Lap 15.
Yes, and he is the first of the early stoppers. Those that are going to make a two-stop race, we'd expect to see coming in somewhere around lap 22 to 25. And Michael Schumacher just squeaking through one of the two Lotuses. The gap 1.3 in fact just flashed up, 1.376 seconds. And on that lap, Michael Schumacher was 0.8 of a second faster than Ayrton Senna.
Here, tyres being taken out of their tyre warmers for Jean Alesi. That are the Ferrari mechanics with their yellow and black overalls in the pits. And what has one thing done? Well, there is a car stopped, and that is one of the two Frentzen. That is Heinz-Harald Frentzen, stopped out on the circuit with his Sauber, and that's the end of his race.
Well, a very disappointing end to a very fine debut as a Grand Prix driver. Frentzen certainly made an impact on everybody here this weekend, not least of all on his teammate Karl Wendlinger. But a very, very encouraging start in '94 for the Mercedes-Benz Ilmor V10.
John, there's Karl Wendlinger, the other Sauber Mercedes, and while Michael Schumacher is getting closer to Ayrton Senna, Wendlinger has got Jos Verstappen crawling all over him, and Verstappen is currently in 6th place on his debut.
Fine effort. But this is now getting to the interesting stage. Senna has, for some reason, lost up to almost a second in the last few laps. Michael Schumacher pushing only to the limit as he knows how. And of course, we have Martin Brundle ahead. You see the red and white McLaren Peugeot, but he is on fresh tyres, and there, I think, is the reason why Heinz-Harald Frentzen is out of the race. Locked it up, spun off, engine stalled.
So, Michael Schumacher behind Ayrton Senna, and there's Karl Wendlinger in the pits. So maybe Sauber does go for a two-stop race.
Well, either doing that or they put over 100 litres of fuel in that pit stop, but judging the time it took for the car for wheel change and the amount of fuel going in, I can assure you now that Karl Wendlinger will make more than one pit stop at this Grand Prix.
Michael Schumacher still behind Ayrton Senna. The top 6, Senna, Schumacher, Alesi, Hill, Verstappen and Barrichello. 7th, Katayama. 8th, Karl Wendlinger. 9th, Eddie Irvine. And in 10th position, Mark Blundell. So that's 2 Yamaha engines in the top 10 after 18 laps out of 71. So Senna edging closer to Martin Brundle, who of course is on new tires and is the only remaining McLaren Peugeot in the race. And here is Jean Alesi, his first stop on lap 19.
And mechanics diving into those radiator boxes, and 9.1 seconds. Alesi is out.
And there's more people coming in and out of pits. Also, I can hear someone downstairs.
Well, Karl Wendlinger.
Oh, it's Verstappen is in the pits, John.
Okay, but crucial moment now for Senna and Schumacher as we look at Eddie Irvine and his Sassel Jordan in for his first fuel and tyre stop. Oh, and Lilland. Well, Senna sneaks underneath Brundle just at the end of the pit straight. Schumacher momentarily held up, and Senna used traffic absolutely brilliantly, because it's not just a question of getting past, it's doing it in a place where you get the advantage and your competitor is at a disadvantage.
So Verstappen's been in, John, and out again. He stalled the engine. Well, it's the first time he made a pit stop.
He's not meant to stall the engine, though.
Exactly. So Senna leads Michael Schumacher by 0.8 of a second. And this is the gap. You're riding with the German, you're looking at the Brazilian.
Well, that camera shot gives you some idea of the amount of vibration that a driver has to contend with through the wheel. And as we said the other day, that doesn't tell you what it's like actually in the car.
There we see it from outside, and the gap is getting smaller and smaller, but that Benetton is right on the edge. Michael Schumacher sliding that car around the circuit. Now, which one of those two is going to make a pit stop first, and which team is going to get the driver out fastest?
Well, I don't know if anybody anticipated a battle for the lead. When Ayrton Senna moved into the Williams-Renault team, everybody said this is a foregone conclusion. The championship's his. Give it to him now. Well, certainly no one told the Benetton Ford team or Michael Schumacher. And this is going to be, I feel, the battle we're going to enjoy throughout the 94 season, and I can't wait to see more of it.
Well, how much difference do new tyres make? Let's just wait and see. Where's Martin? Oh, we're trying to find Martin Brundle. Martin Brundle is still doing high 22s. He was doing that before his pit stop. While we look at Christian Fittipaldi going very slow, so that's the second arrows that is out of the race if he comes into the pits. But because of this traffic, I would say it's Schumacher and Senna closing up.
Rubens Barrichello, the second of the two Jordans, into the pits. They were starting with a slightly heavier fuel load, some 2 laps after Irvine came in. And Barrichello, like Irvine, a little lazy on the exit of the pits.
There's a happy man, John. Eric Comas, the LaRousse Ford runner. While I think downstairs, underneath us, Michael Schumacher or Ayrton Senna. It's Ayrton Senna having a pit stop. I could hear a car. Oh, and Schumacher is out first. Schumacher has taken the lead in the pits. Whoa!
What a fantastic battle for the lead of this Brazilian Grand Prix. And Schumacher not only has got the lead, he's got probably a second and a half, almost 2 seconds of a lead. The battle for the lead was taken in the pit lane. It looked a pretty good pit stop from when we were watching for Ayrton Senna, but then Senna's now back.
Well, we don't know what happened there. Oh, that's the other Benetton. That's Jos Verstappen, I think, John. The other Benetton of Verstappen that was a lap down, I think is now right behind Senna. We see Michael Schumacher leading this race, I reckon. Yeah, he is. Michael Schumacher is leading the race. Then it's Ayrton Senna. The Benetton we see behind the Williams is Jos Verstappen, who is 1 lap down after a, well, let's say, missed pit stop. Michael Schumacher.
And Schumacher, I was going to say, Schumacher ran very, very wide indeed, but in fact that was going back to Verstappen. So the two Benettons, the driver helmets very similar. The camera went from one to the other.
Three seconds was Michael Schumacher faster than Ayrton Senna in the Williams team on the outlap and the pit stop. Well, I must say that's a lot.
Well, that's just an enormous amount. Part of that gap, of course, came from the fact that Schumacher was out onto the circuit. In my mind, certainly a second and a half quicker, and he made up virtually another second or so in the course of that opening lap. Oh, a nasty moment. Mark Blundell in the Yamaha engine Tyrrell has gone cross-country somewhere. The rear bodywork missing from the car. And whether that is a result of the bodywork coming off, and there you see,
ooh,
and Verstappen having to take very, very rapid avoiding action.
That is a very big shunt indeed, John, for Mark Blundell.
Well, I don't know what happened, whether that was, it looked like the rear body came off, and of course in the course of doing that it can damage the rear wing, but wherever it was on a downhill flat left-hand corner, probably fourth gear, The grass, of course, sodden wet, and that's why there's so much mud onto the circuit.
John, we're all talking about Senna, new car, new engine, but the Benetton has got a brand new engine as well. Although they've done more testing with it than the Williams-Renault team has, that is a brand new V8.
And not only is it brand new, Ford and Cosworth are very proud of that engine because its design, development, the whole program was completed in just about a year, and they reckon that for an engine of that competitiveness, that's pretty good.
And also it's the highest revving V8 engine ever built, I believe. Well, it's interesting, John. There's a lot of people... Ooh, Ayrton locking a wheel, nearly overshooting the corner, but there's a lot of people making pit stops. The first pit stops are nearly over here. Johnny Herbert currently in 10th, Martin Brundle in 11th, and Eric Gomez is up to 9th. They're sort of slowly but surely making their way up.
Lord, you know, this is a moment looking at the bodywork and the debris on the circuit from Mark Blundell's Tyrrell Yamaha. Maybe this is the time to put the safety car out, allow the marshals to clear up that debris. Of course, that's going to have the benefit, from our point of view, of closing the field back up together again. But in the interest of safety, and that part of the circuit, you can see just how much avoidance cars are having to make, and it's a fairly violent move over to the left. So Roland Runterado, that is his call. He's the car of the course.
Well, Sean, if we remember Hockenheim last year when Damon Hill had a puncture near the finish of the race because probably some debris cut a hole in the tire. I mean, there's a lot of debris out there.
Well, carbon fiber, when it is damaged in that way, it breaks into very sharp shards. And of course, there will be a lot of it on that particular part of the track. So it's not a question of avoiding the obvious large bits. It's a matter of maybe luck. You see there's bits of bodywork right in the middle of the road, but there will be much, much finer bits, which of course can just cut through a tire, literally like a scalpel.
So Michael Schumacher will complete lap 25 out of 71 when he crosses the line and start his 26th in front of Ayrton Senna, who crosses the line now, and the gap between those two was 3.9 seconds. It's 3.4 seconds, but that was partly, I think, because of Eddie Irvine.
Well, this is the first time we've seen Irvine and Senna in close proximity on the track, and of course the last time was in Japan. This time the situation not dissimilar. They're not racing for position. Senna a lap ahead, but Irvine pulls way over to the right, and somebody has just driven off the circuit as we lost sight of that corner.
So Martin Brundle in 9th position, now the last of the unlapped runners. And remember, Martin Brundle was the first man to make a pit stop.
Well, I just wonder what really did take place during that pit stop for Williams' team. They came out of the pits, they were in second place. I think they may have put a lot more fuel in this stop in the hope of then just making a very quick dash for the finish in the last 20 or so laps.
Pierluigi Martini's gone into the top 5. He has not stopped yet for tyres or fuel. Carl Wendlinger is now 6th, Barrichello 7th, and the top 4, of course, still unchanged with Schumacher, Senna, Hill and Alesi.
Well, outside of the front two runners who are running, in the case of Schumacher 19.1, in the case of Senna it was a 19.9, now it's a 20.5, but that was due to the time he lost overtaking Eddie Irvine. Everybody else in the 22s, the 23s, and then much slower. Well, a little bit of lost opportunity, and Schumacher makes no bones about it the second time.
But the debris on the circuit still, I think, well, something should be done. I mean, either as you take it away or, as you say, get the safety car out.
Well, one thing's for sure, nobody's going to step on the track unless the safety car is out. But having said that, that bodywork is gone. But Schumacher went over something on the track. Now, he saw the bodywork had been removed. He took the opportunity to widen his entry into the corner, but in doing so, he did go over something on the track.
Well, the computer says that car 14 has stopped out on the circuit, and car 14 is Rubens Barrichello. Well, let's wait and see, because...
Well, I think that may have been the car we saw where we were watching Schumacher and Brundle. It just caught my eye, and that's at the back of the circuit, just at this point here on the exit from this left-hand corner.
I thought I made a mistake. It's car 4. That's Mark Blundell, and he very definitely stopped, because Rubens Barrichello is at this moment right in front of Michael Schumacher.
In fact, there he is.
And in front of Barrichello is Pierluigi Martini. There we see him. So Carl Wendlinger has now moved up to 5th position.
But the big frustration indeed for Schumacher, as he's got Martini and Barrichello battling for position, and not too much pleasure in the face of Schumacher. He got past Barrichello. He's now got to find his way past Pierluigi Martini, and he is not another easy gentleman to get a car ahead of, even if you're the race leader.
There's the top 6 on your screen, while Martini and Wendlinger are switched. There we see Barrichello still 7th, Brundle 8th, 9th Eddie Irvine, 10th Jos Verstappen, and the rest of the runners. Well, Mark Blundell in 18th position. Well, he is very definitely out of the race. So Schumacher leads Senna. We're going on to lap 30, so there's 41 laps to go. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back from Brazil. Welcome back here on Eurosport. Michael Schumacher leads Ayrton Senna, Damon Hill, Jean Alesi, Carl Wendlinger, Rubens Barrichello is 6th, Pierluigi Martini 7th, 8th Martin Brundle, 9th Eddie Irvine, 10th Jos Verstappen, 11th Ukio Katayama, 12th Johnny Herbert, 13th is Eric Gomez, 14th Pedro Lamy, and in 15th Olivier Panis. After 30 laps here at Interlagos. And John, what a race this has turned out to be.
Not just what a race, it's the pace of the race. For me, that is outstanding. Schumacher and Senna are just flying away. That last lap from Michael Schumacher, lap 31 minutes 18.866. Senna's lap, the previous lap, 1 minute 20.023, and we're waiting for him to go through to see if there has been any improvement. And there we look at Damon Hill currently now in 3rd place, but 32 seconds behind teammate Senna, and really not a great deal Damon can do. So a rather lonely Sunday afternoon, in fact, for Damon Hill in Brazil.
Damon Hill, who, John, unless I've missed it, he hasn't made a pit stop yet. So Damon might opt for a different strategy than Ayrton Senna, and he might do one stop, because we're nearly half distance now. I don't think he's made a stop.
Schumacher lifting his hand off the wheel to acknowledge David Brabham pulling over to the right to let him through. And not a particularly easy part of the track to take your hand off the wheel.
Well, Michael Schumacher leads the Williams team, Ayrton Senna and Damon Hill, and gives us a quick opportunity to say happy birthday to their test driver, David Coulthard, who's in Paris watching Eurosport. David, happy birthday. You probably have some work to do.
Are you sure he's in Paris watching Eurosport, Allard?
Well, so says his manager.
Jean Alesi, Frenchman who never ever knows when to give up, or he doesn't even know what the meaning of the word is.
So Jean's fallen back to 4th position. Now some 25 seconds behind Damon Hill, running just over half a second slower than the Williams Renault, but he's quite a long way ahead of Carl Wendlinger, and Wendlinger is the first of the runners that's 1 lap behind in 5th position, while Barrichello is 6th, and in 7th position at the moment, running very competitive times in the 1:21 second bracket, is Martin Brundle. And whatever you say about Martin, he is one of the best racers out there.
Well, in fact, that little pack of Wendlinger, Barrichello, Brundle and Eddie Irvine a further 6 seconds behind are beginning to create a little bit of motor racing interest here in Interlagos. But we have yet to see what's going to happen. This is the first Grand Prix in which refueling and real race strategy has been introduced. And, well, the excitement of Schumacher leading a Grand Prix from Senna, particularly the Brazilian Grand Prix, still very much in our minds. But we are barely yet at half distance, and, well, we're going to have to wait and see if there are any surprises at all from the Benetton team, the Williams team. Those are the only two in contention this afternoon.
Well, you were talking about creating some motor racing behind the leading drivers, John, while we are watching Ayrton Senna. Barrichello is 0.7 of a second, half a second ahead of Martin Brundle. Half a second behind Carl Wendlinger, 1.7 seconds in front of Martin Brundle, who is nearly a second a lap faster. Then there's 6 seconds to Eddie Irvine, who's got a second and a half in hand over Jos Verstappen in 9th position. So position 6 to 9, some good racing going on, but of course, as we're in Brazil, we'll follow local hero Ayrton Senna. 6.8 seconds, the gap with race leader Michael Schumacher. Now 6.8 seconds. If Ayrton Senna can keep it that way, well, we're in for a very good last session of this Grand Prix. And let's just hope we're going to see a very good fight on the circuit. No mechanical retirements whatsoever.
Well, I think the general consensus was we were going to see 3 approximately 24-lap sprint races. We've seen a slightly shorter than 24-lap sprint, and that was where the lead change took place in the pit lane. Schumacher took the lead away from Ayrton Senna, and he's managed to extend that gap to 6 points. Well, it's just changed 5.8 seconds on that last lap. Senna a second faster than Schumacher. Suspect, once again, traffic being the reason for that 1 second differential.
Well, John, this bodes well for a Grand Prix season ahead. The next Grand Prix in Japan at TI. Well, if Benetton can keep up the pace, if Ferrari can go a little quicker, McLaren and Peugeot, if they find some time, then we could well be in for a very exciting and interesting second half of this Grand Prix season. Well, there we see a little battle. We see a Jordan. That's, I think, Rubens Barrichello. Was it Eddie Irvine? Behind Carl Wendlinger. So that is Rubens Barrichello attacking Carl Wendlinger. The gap was half a second, but, well, you don't have to be very intelligent to see that that is not half a second.
The difficulty for Barrichello is on the uphill drag up onto the pit straight and past the pit straight. Has the Hart V10 got the grunt to get past the Mercedes Ilmor V10? And certainly Barrichello one way then the other, and he's going to go the long way around. Is he going to make it? He can afford to go deeper. Well, Wendlinger decided there is no way, my son. I'm going to concede.
Well, the difference between Carl Wendlinger and Rubens Barrichello when they crossed the line was exactly 0. So side by side, and a very good fight. The black car is Carl Wendlinger, who was the second driver to stop and get new tires and fuel, and Rubens Barrichello, who stopped a little later, came from further back on the grid, but is fighting in the top 6. And the other Jordan driver, here we see the top 6, incidentally, on your screen. Eddie Irvine is in 8th, and they're split by Martin Brundle, and we just caught a glimpse of Martin in the background. We saw him closing up on the Barrichello-Wendlinger fight. He's disappeared now. Here we see Schumacher trying to overtake Eddie Irvine, and oh, Schumacher is gone off. Schumacher, oh, Verstappen, sorry.
Oh dear me, that is an appalling moment. Eddie Irvine pulling out to try and pass. He clipped Jos Verstappen, who was on his left-hand side, and that is an enormous moment at the end of the straight. And, well, we'll have to wait and see that again. That is always, always dangerous. Coming down a straight, two cars racing. Irvine, in this case, looking to lap another car. Pulled out. Verstappen was committed to go on the left-hand side, down the inside. And there, Martin Brundle.
Well, Martin, I said, like, well, he was closing up on that battle and he disappeared, but now we know why. Actually, didn't have anything to do with it. He was minding his own business, and oops, there is a car on the circuit.
That's the safety car. That's Eddie Irvine's Jordan. That car is going to pull the Jordan off the racetrack, and you can see the debris scattered all over the circuit at the end of the back straight. That's the second fastest part of the circuit. You can see there's a Ligier against the barrier. There is Verstappen's Benetton, and somewhere amongst all that also Martin Brundle's McLaren Peugeot. Well, high drama here in Interlagos, and a very unfortunate but very lucky escape for debutant Grand Prix driver Jos Verstappen. And, well, I would like to see that incident again, whether there was blame to be apportioned or whether it was just simply, here we see it again. Irvine slipstreaming, unaware of the proximity of Verstappen to him. Verstappen gets onto the grass, turns right across, and look, Martin Brundle, oh my goodness, very lucky indeed not to have a car come down on his head. And Brundle must not have known what was going on.
As Verstappen, John, even before he stops, he sort of flips over his visor and says, oh dear, what has happened to me? He says at an enormous shunt, and, well, pretty relaxed, I should say.
Well,
doesn't change anything for race leader Michael Schumacher, who's leading Ayrton Senna by 6.1 seconds at the end of lap 37. Damon Hill a further 46 seconds behind. Then it's Jean Alesi, who I think is a lap behind now. Carl Wendlinger, Rubens Barrichello, Ukio Katayama, and Johnny Herbert in 8th position.
Well, after all the drama, the excitement of that four-car moment, look, skid marks you can see on the right of your screen where it all began. That is where Verstappen's car was forced to put his left side of the car on the grass. It literally just turned right, straight into Irvine, clipped the Ligier, and finally, as Martin Brundle was turning into the corner, he found his car having a Benetton rolling over the top of it, and I think Martin Brundle was genuinely shocked when he was out of his car. It was as if he didn't really understand what had taken place.
There's David Brabham in the Simtac, and David started this race, and before the race he said, Allard, there's only one thing I want to do. I just want to finish this race. Wherever it is, I want to see the man with the checkered flag, because we learn so much for doing a Grand Prix distance that is unbelievable. Well, there's a couple of teams ready for pit stops there. Well, Schumacher, not this lap.
Well, the gap at the end of the 38th lap was 6.2 seconds. This is what I suspect could be a case of Benetton put a smallish amount of fuel in at that first pit stop. But Williams, in my opinion, may have put a great deal more fuel in, and they may well regain the lead by not having to make a second pit stop at this point of the Grand Prix.
We're on lap 40. There's the end of this lap. There's 31 laps to go. Let's say one pit stop to go. And Michael Schumacher leading the race in the sole remaining Benetton Ford. And, well, David Brabham up in 13th position. That's the last of the remaining runners. So there's 13 out of 26 cars still in this race. And Damon Hill, a pit stop. And John, that's lap 39. This, I think, could well be the last pit stop Damon's making. And I think it's the first one as well.
Well, 9.6 seconds for that stop, and if that's the case, they've managed to get in something like another 70 or so litres of fuel. And I think that Damon has just gone, in fact, a lap down on the race leader, Michael Schumacher, while he was in the pits.
Interesting, though, he is right behind race leader Michael Schumacher now, so that's a whole lap, but it's interesting to see what the times are going to be like. Schumacher running low 19s. Damon was a good second off that time, but then if he would have started on a higher fuel load, maybe his tyres would have been worn out a bit more. Who knows, who knows?
Well, the debate after this Grand Prix will go on, I think, forever, because I'm sure everybody will say, had I done something different to what we chose to do, I obviously could have done better. And we'll see probably a few more excuses being created for the Motor Racing Drivers Book of Excuses, which is in already its 4th edition and available at all retail outlets.
There's Damon Hill, currently in 3rd position, and there we see Eric Bernard and Eddie Irvine making their way back to the pits. Well, Bernard and Irvine, 2 drivers involved in that mega shunt, an enormous accident with Jos Verstappen and Martin Brundle involved. Always Schumacher going very wide.
That's a legacy of hard work. Those Goodyear tires have been used absolutely to the limit. This is his 2nd set of tires. So, waiting once again to see at what point is Schumacher going to choose to make his 2nd stop. There's the man in 2nd place, Ayrton Senna. And Senna, Schumacher running approximately in the mid 1 minute 19s. Damon's outlap, of course, 1 minute 40, so we have to wait until completion of the 42nd lap to see what the value of a fresh set of tyres is at 2/3 race distance.
There we see race leader Michael Schumacher closing in on a Minardi, and that is Pierluigi Martini in 9th position. Martini, who's made 1 pit stop so far. And that was a very late pit stop, so I would not be surprised if they go the distance on 1 stop. Schumacher, the end of lap 42. He's not coming in on this lap. And that's the corner reel. A 1:20.1 was his lap. So he lost quite a lot of time. If Ayrton's could do a low 19 or a high 18 even. The gap was 6.394 seconds, and it's now 6.0 seconds. So Ayrton getting a little closer, and Damon Hill still in the 121s.
Of course, Allard, Ayrton Senna's got to make his way past Damon Hill, past Comas in the Larousse. So a lot of work that Senna's got to do, and of course when Schumacher was passing Martini, that would have accounted for an addition of a half a second to his lap time. But over the last 2 days, watching the Benetton Ford around the circuit, it's been pretty clear that in these corners, that car has got an advantage. Now, the reason I feel that it is able to run faster, longer on its tires is because the Benetton is actually using its tires better. It's not abusing the tire quite as much as the rest of the field is doing. In other words, tires like Benetton's better than any other car here in Brazil.
And that Benetton is leading the race at the end of lap 43 in front of Ayrton Senna, Damon Hill, Jean Alesi, Carl Wendlinger and Rubens Barrichello. We'll be back after the break here on Eurosport. Welcome back at Interlagos. Welcome back with race leader Michael Schumacher. And we've just seen Ayrton Senna for his 2nd stop, and that'll be his last stop, John.
And if I was the Benetton Ford team, I would be calling Schumacher in immediately, because they must not allow Senna any advantage on those fresh tyres to eat into the lead currently Schumacher has over Ayrton Senna. So I would hope to see Schumacher in the pits very quickly indeed.
Schumacher coming in now. He is. Well done, John. Well done, Benetton team. Schumacher into the pits. And this is a crucial stop.
This is the stop for victory here this afternoon. 8.6 seconds was the time we saw from the Williams team. Well, the clock stops at 7.4, but in fact it's about 8.4 by the time he got out. I would say the situation is status quo. This is your race leader, Michael Schumacher.
Schumacher going back out onto the circuit. And where is Ayrton Senna? That's the question. That's Damon Hill, who is in third position. But Damon is now again in front of Michael Schumacher. John Alesi's been in as well. Same time Ayrton Senna was in. So, and there's more and more drivers coming into the pits for their last fuel stop. So thank God we have a computer working very well for us. Otherwise, well, we'll be guessing and guessing. Ayrton Senna. He's got about 25 laps to do it in.
Well, both leader and second place man have got character in depth, believe me. But it just appears to me to be a simple case of the Benetton Ford in Brazil is the quicker car of the two. If you take Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna as being equal in terms of speed, and one now has to think about ability as well. Benetton seems to have won the day on lap 46.
Schumacher has gone past, and now Ayrton Senna goes past, and it's interesting to see what Ayrton Senna's lap time would be on that first flying lap on the new set of tyres, a low 19. Well, I'm not sure what to think of it. The gap is 9.2 seconds.
And that's a gap, that's extended the gap before Senna took his pit stop to race leader Michael Schumacher. I mean, I'm staggered, to be honest, but I did not expect to come to Brazil and see Benetton with the new Ford Zytek R engine putting it across Williams Renault with Ayrton Senna leading the team.
So Senna on lap 47 out of 71. It's got a 9.2 second gap to make up, and then he's going to pass Michael Schumacher if he wants to win the Brazilian Grand Prix, if he wants to win on his debut for Frank Williams. And I'll bet you, John, he's giving it 100+% to be able to do that, to give the Brazilians what they came to see. Every time the man comes past, the grandstands are waving him on, but, well, the gap's still there.
In fact, I don't think they're waving him on, they're just holding up their hands in shock. It looks a bit like a wave because they all do it together, but in fact, it's more disbelief that the national hero of Brazil is being beaten by a 24-year-old German.
Well, he's not beaten yet. 7.9 seconds to gap. So that's close. 1.3 seconds. And Damon Hill now running at roughly the same speed that Michael Schumacher is running at. In fourth place, it's John Alesi. Fifth now, Rubens Barrichello. Sixth, Ukio Katayama. Seventh, Carl Wendlinger. While Katayama comes into the pit, so he probably loses that sixth place to Carl Wendlinger again, who has been into the pits. Johnny Herbert, 8th. 9th, Eric Gomez, and 10th, Pierluigi Martini, who's just been lapped by Ayrton Senna.
So teams in the point at the minute are the Benetton Ford team, Williams Renault, and there we see again, and, well, you look at it time and time again, Eddie Irvine certainly did not give Jos Verstappen any opportunity at all. He had to go out onto the left, onto the grass. On the grass, it is possible to steer a car straight, but the reaction that Verstappen made was to try and get back on the track, and of course the car took a bite as soon as it hit the tarmac, and really a situation was set into motion. Fortunately, no injuries that we're aware of. All the drivers were seen out of the cars, walking, some of them actually talking to one another.
And then the top 6 on our screen, but Katayama is in the pits for a pit stop, and there's Ayrton Senna taking a lot of risk with Eric Comas.
Well, Comas could have been a lot more helpful for Senna than he was, but Comas, we've seen in the past, is not prepared to give ground if he feels it's going to disadvantage him himself. So Senna the long way around, and not the nicest approach into that very long, difficult fourth gear right-hand corner. But it's all over and done. 23 laps to go. 7.8 seconds is the difference between leader and second place Senna. And both men lapping at approximately the same pace, 1 minute 19.1.
So Michael Schumacher crosses the line, a 1:19.896. Ayrton Senna crosses the line now. We've got to wait for him to see what that lap time is, and he is taking no prisoners with anybody. A 1:20.1, he's lost time there.
Well, that's simply because Eric Comas made life difficult for him on the uphill climb, and he had to pull well over to the left. The momentum was momentarily lost, and Adrian Newey, the aerodynamicist, chief designer at Williams Renault, with his computers in front of him, working it out, calculating, of course. They are giving messages all the time to Senna from the pit board. Senna knows, I think, full well what's required of him as Rubens Barrichello makes his second stop. He was in 5th place. Carl Wendlinger in 6th, and one expects to see the battle continue between Barrichello and Wendlinger. It's been going on more or less throughout the race. Is Barrichello able to rejoin the track or not before Wendlinger regains 5th spot?
Michael Schumacher's last lap was a 19.896, and there we see Damon Hill right in front of Michael Schumacher.
Now, I wonder, are we going to see a bit of gamesmanship, a bit of teamwork going on between the two Williams drivers? Schumacher, in effect, is the meat in the Williams sandwich.
A 20.178 for Michael Schumacher. And Schumacher, I did not see being held up on that lap. A 1:20.1 for Ayrton Senna. So maybe there's some oil down on the circuit, or, well, I don't know, but the times have definitely dropped to 1:20s.
Well, this is a difficult moment for Michael Schumacher. He will want to put himself ahead of Damon Hill as quickly as possible. It's not possible there, Michael Schumacher. The longer he is trapped behind Damon Hill, the more difficult it is for him to regain his momentum. Panic sets in. Well, Damon, I must say, well, a typical British English gentleman, and let Schumacher get through there without any hesitation whatsoever. I wonder what team boss Frank Williams might say to Damon after the race. He said, Damon, you made it a little bit easy for Schumacher, didn't you?
A 1:21.198 was Michael Schumacher's last lap, and Ayrton Senna has closed in a little bit, and Damon Hill in 3rd place, a lap down on the man right in front of him, race leader Michael Schumacher. And that, John, a 19.4 for Ayrton Senna. The gap now 6.3 seconds. So Senna has got to keep pushing, and Schumacher has got to keep finding the gaps with the back markers, because they could well influence the outcome of this race.
Well, the next car on the road ahead of Schumacher is Pedro Lamy in the Lotus. You see, in fact, he's just gotten past, and he's done it at a part of the circuit which is good. He's been able to get through quickly and cleanly, so there ought to be little loss of time. Pedro Lamy using his mirrors. Senna, of course, has got to find a way past Damon Hill. Well, that's not going to be a problem. He then will have to be confronted with Lamy. Well, Lamy's been cooperative, so I would expect 6.3 seconds, that's the gap between 1st and 2nd place. Not to change a great deal, maybe a couple of tenths in the favour of Schumacher. It'll depend really where Senna has his opportunity to pass Damon Hill and Pedro Lamy.
There we see the pit board for Michael Schumacher, who is leading the Brazilian Grand Prix at the end of lap 52. And we're just waiting for the gap there is between him and Ayrton Senna. 5.5 seconds. Senna has got 5.5 seconds and 19 laps to go to try and win his home Grand Prix, and he is doing everything to close the gap with this man. 13 cars we've got still in the race. Last runner is David Brabham in 13th position, still going around in the Syntec, 13 laps behind race leader Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna and Damon Hill. That's the situation in Interlagos. We're back after the break here on Eurosport. Ayrton Senna has completed 54 laps and he is behind race leader Michael Schumacher. The gap is 6.0 seconds. He is a little quicker than Michael, and they are both having a free run to the finish at the moment, or a free couple of laps, let's put it that way. Then we have Damon Hill, Jean Alesi and Rubens Barrichello, Carl Wendlinger 6th, Katayama 7th, Herbert 8th, Eric Gomez 9th, and in 10th place, Pierluigi Martini.
Well, Damon Hill, now that he's allowed Senna to overtake him and not really race with him, is equally picking up his own individual race pace. But of course, still almost a couple of seconds slower than that of Senna, and likewise that of Schumacher. And there, the man in 4th place, Jean Alesi, and really this little man from outside Avignon in France, of Sicilian family. In fact, his name is Giovanni, I believe, rather than Jean, but because in school he got teased and bullied, and he reverted to Jean. And when Ferrari do, we keep saying this, when Ferrari do eventually get every element of this car working, he is going to be irrepressible.
Is that if or when, John?
I think it's a bit of both. I hope it happens sooner than later.
So Alesi always giving it 110%, while the gap between Schumacher and Senna is now 1 second less than at the end of lap 54. 5 seconds exactly. So 5.013, 20.3 and a 19.3. And I don't know whether there are any back markers involved there.
Well, we were watching Alesi. It's possible that somebody had to be overtaken. And even though you are passing a car, you're getting cooperation. The little distraction that's involved can easily account for the tenths that we're counting as the race between 1st and 2nd place. And now David Brabham again to face a lap from race leader Schumacher. To some degree, a driver is able to choose where he laps a car. Quite often it's prudent to back off marginally earlier than you might wish to do to enable yourself to get the run off a corner and therefore pass him. Now I would expect to see Schumacher get past Brabham at the end of the straight or under braking, or in fact in this case midway down the straight.
Did Ayrton Senna close up more than that second he did at the end of last lap? Oh, and Senna has spun. Senna has spun and stopped and is out of the race. Ayrton Senna is out of the race, and well, this virtually hands Michael Schumacher the victory with 15 laps to go. Ayrton Senna is out of the race, and whoa!
Well, that looks simply a case of too much right foot too soon. The back end broke away. Senna wasn't able to keep it under control. It's a question of, did he get his left foot onto the clutch pedal? Could he keep the engine running?
Well, he's moving at the moment in the wrong direction. But is that because he's moving downhill or whether he's got the engine running? I think, John, he is out, retired. Ayrton Senna is not going to score any points in the opening Grand Prix of the 1994 season. Well, it's fine to know what his pulse rate is, but I think he's fuming.
Well, I think there must be enormous disappointment. The crowd facing us are looking down towards that part of the circuit. They won't be able to see Senna's car, but the silence is pure disbelief.
So, Michael Schumacher, John, would you believe it or not, has got a lap on everybody.
Well, don't believe that all danger has passed for Schumacher. We've seen in the past when the drivers have had massive leads that you fall into the mode of loss of concentration, loss of rhythm, overtaking back markers. Of course, the Benetton team will be indicating all sorts of signals now to ease up, reduce the pace. That's very hard for a driver to do as well. Look, there's the sign, P1, Senna out.
He's probably seen that himself as well, but that's nice to be confirmed, I suppose, when you're in the car. And I wonder what they'll be saying on the radio now.
Well, I think that signal maybe was as much for Michael Schumacher, but probably more just to rub it in to the thousands of Brazilians that are facing the Benetton pit, as if they didn't know already. Benetton team is telling them.
Michael Schumacher leads the Grand Prix. Damon Hill in second place. Jean Alesi third. Rubens Barrichello fourth. Carl Wendlinger fifth. And, well, we still see Ayrton Senna in sixth place, but that is Ukio Katayama, and then Johnny Herbert will be seventh. Pierluigi Martini eighth, and Eric Gomez ninth. And Herbert in seventh. John, who would have thought that's at the beginning of the race?
Well, I don't think Johnny Herbert could have predicted a place in the top 10. Lotus team really having a hard winter test program. They weren't particularly confident about a good result, but of course in Brazil, and as in every opening Grand Prix, this is the opportunity for a points finish, certainly a good result. When the Grand Prix season moves into Europe, things get very much more difficult, very much more competitive, and with races coming virtually every fortnight, hardly any time for a team to develop, catch their breath, or test.
So Rubens Barrichello moving up to fourth position. That is, if he finishes there, his best result ever. And he'll be top Brazilian as well. So if we see Brazilians cheering, I think we'll see him cheering for Rubens Barrichello in fourth in the Jordan Hart.
And the battle that's been going on between Barrichello and Carl Wendlinger in the first, or the only Sauber in the race, is now virtually a 6-second lead. So I'm making a little judgment that Wendlinger and Sauber are accepting 2 points that fifth place offers them.
And there we see people leaving the circuit. Surprise, surprise. Well, if my man doesn't win, I don't want to see the finish of it.
Well, that must be the most disappointed man in Brazil this afternoon. We only will know later what was the reason for that spin. It's most uncharacteristic of Senna to lose a car like that. It seemed very elementary from where we were watching. Car just stepped out. Traction and grip were lost. This is the point of the circuit. There you see the black marks.
And Schumacher is backed off, now running around to high 1 minute 20 seconds, low 1:21. And there's third place man Jean Alesi, qualified third, and if he keeps going, he'll finish in third position as well.
And in many respects, it's a fitting result for Ferrari that one of their two cars should be in the top three. It's this kind of encouragement that Ferrari needs. You see Alesi's hand out of the cockpit, signaling to Martini, get out of my way, Pierluigi. I'm still racing, even though I don't know how many seconds it is. We can't see yet on the screen. And look, Alesi having all sorts of problems. Pierluigi Martini, I see you behind me, but you're not quick enough. You're not close enough to me for me to say, take the road, Jean.
Well, Martini lapping around 1 minute 24 seconds, and Alesi 1:22.3 on that last lap, so he is quicker. If we can see past the mirror, you see Pierluigi Martini on the straight, and there is Jean Alesi passing him. into the first corner, very late on the brakes, and Alesi, well, he's 23.6, and there is Rubens Barrichello. And Barrichello, of course, trying to get onto the rostrum. I mean, that would be a dream result for the young Brazilian, but fourth, his best result, and a very good start for the Jordan team. There, Flavio Briatore. Well, I wonder what his pulse rate is.
Well, Flavio looks reasonably composed. 10 laps to go. Of course, the teams are aware of what's going on the telemetry from the car to the pits. There's no communication the other way around. So if there is a problem, they would certainly know about it. The only danger I can see for Schumacher that is out of his control is that there is a lot of paper on the track, a lot of debris has been on the track all day. That can get into those radiator inlets on the side pods, of course, as I said earlier, can cause overheating and ultimately lead to a retirement.
Michael Schumacher leads Damon Hill, Jean Alesi, Rubens Barrichello, Carl Wendlinger, Ukio Katayami, Johnny Herbert, Martini, Comas, and Pedro Lamy. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back here on Eurosport. This is Michael Schumacher leading on lap 64 out of 71. I'm joined, and I'm not happy to say I'm joined, by a driver who had a very spectacular accident. I'd rather have him out on the circuit, but he's here with us. Jos Verstappen. Jos, what happened?
Yes, what happened? I was behind Irvin, and I tried to pass him. I was in the slipstream, so I tried to pass him. I was already next to him, and then he closed the gap, and no, he had a big crash.
You call that a very big crash, but you roll the car and you're going off the circuit, opening your visor, looking around. Pretty cool on it.
Yeah, first, you know, I saw I was turning over, and then I came back on the ground, and I was looking where I was. So, and then I jumped out of the car and looking to the car, and now the car is real bad.
You're right.
Yeah, I have no problems, but for sure tomorrow my neck get hurt for sure.
We watched the accident a number of times in replay, Jos, and it certainly looked a very frightening moment. It's a moment that can happen at any time in a Grand Prix. Eddie Irvine appeared to pull out very quickly from behind the back of Bernard's Ligier. But do you think he actually saw you or even knew that you were so close to him?
Yes, I was close to him, but I was in the slipstream, so I was in the same position like him. But then he went to the left side where I was, so he hit me, and then I spun, and I hit Brundle, and then I turned over.
Now, what's it like starting a Grand Prix?
I must say, in the beginning it went very well, and then we had a bad pit stop because I had some problems with the clutch. But I must say, it was reasonable good.
Thank you very much. I think you'll back down, get a massage.
Well, a man who's here to tell the tale from what was a dramatic and spectacular shunt, but again, very important to emphasize that construction of Grand Prix cars these days protects their drivers. I'm delighted to say that all four drivers in that incident, but principally Jos Verstappen, sitting here, still in his overalls, a bit of an ice pack stuck down the back of his overalls just to counter any swelling or any pain that he may suffer from a bit of whiplash. And Formula One really looking to protect drivers, spectators in the march towards safety.
Well, we're watching the positions after lap 64, while Michael Schumacher is on lap 66, and 5 laps to go for the German for his third Grand Prix victory. Well, John, a lap over. Oh, there's a car. Oh, that's probably Senna's car.
It is Senna's car, in fact. That's where it was parked when it was pulled across the track. But just some 5 laps now remaining of the Grand Prix, and everybody accepting the status quo. Eric Comas pounding away still, 2 laps down, about to go 3, and he running in 9th place. Another of the Ford HB users, and up to this point been a pretty good day for Ford engines.
And there's another Ford engine in front of Michael Schumacher, Eric Comas. Well, Schumacher, John, is backed off, driving around, let's say, maybe slowly, very much within himself, and still easy. The fastest man on the circuit. The only one that comes close is actually Rubens Barrichello.
Well, Barrichello has been fighting like mad to close the gap. It was 17 seconds some 8 laps ago, down to 13.7. Of course, John Alesi made his way into motor racing, big-time motor racing, through Eddie Jordan in Formula 3000. He won the championship in 1990. And, of course, that was the year in which he starred in the Tyrrell team.
Well, drivers keep walking in here at Eurosport now. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who was lying in 4th position, and then what happened?
Well, it was so easy. It's just fun. It was a terrible moment for me because at that moment I didn't push, and I was just thinking, okay, now I just drive consistently and slowly, and just I lost the car over the hill, and for me it was a very disappointed moment.
You've waited a long time to start a Grand Prix. What's it like to actually see the light change from red to green? Is it like any other motor race, or is it a bit more spectacular?
Well, that is difficult to explain. When I woke up this morning, I was really again on the power, and I thought, I hope I will finish this day. It doesn't matter what happened, but I hope I will finish this day. And I was a little bit nervous at the start, and I thought, well, let's do it. And I did it. I mean, the start was okay. No doubt about it. It was a little bit tricky because it was downhill, and you have to brake with one foot, and with the same foot you have to accelerate, and that was a little bit tricky. But I thought that's okay. Now just do and drive and finish the race. But the opposite happened, yeah.
But throughout the weekend, Heinz-Harald, the Sauber Mercedes team, really very impressive indeed. You and teammate Karl Wendlinger, competitive in every session and competitive in the Grand Prix, so not going to be very long before a points finish going to come your way.
Well, I wish so much that now the next race in Japan, it will be again the Grand Prix debut for the race, because in that race we have to finish, for me, myself. And it's for me something that I have to learn here in this circuit, or in these races. They are very long, and you are losing a lot of grip during the race, and you have to change the tactic, and there's many things that you have to know as a driver, and it was very important for me to finish the race, to know what happened, you know.
The next Grand Prix, Harold, is the Pacific Grand Prix in Japan, and it's on a new circuit to everybody in Grand Prix racing. I don't think you've driven there, but do you consider Japan, having spent a number of years there in Formula 3000, almost to be first of 2 home Grand Prix?
Yeah, that's right. Japan will be my second home Grand Prix, and I felt very good in these years when I was driving in Japan Formula 3000, and that's right.
Thank you very much for passing by, and good luck in Japan in 3 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're on the 69th to 71 laps. And as Michael Schumacher comes up to cross the line, he'll be on his penultimate lap. He has lapped the entire field. Damon Hill second, John Alesi third. Rubens Barrichello still chipping away into the lead. Alesi has over Barrichello some 12 seconds. That's the difference. But time, I feel, has run out.
John, talking about Karl Wendlinger just a minute ago with Heinz-Harald. I don't know whether Karl has got a problem or what, but he's lapping very slowly indeed, and is now being passed by Ukio Katayama, who's fifth. And I think Johnny Herbert could well score a point here. Now, talking about surprises.
That certainly will be a surprise. I must say it'll be a very pleasant surprise, not only for Johnny Herbert and the legions that follow him around Grand Prix and back in England, but for the Lotus team, who need a fill-up like this to give them a little bit more of a boost than that they've received so far in 1994.
Well, Carl Wendlinger's, I think, got to stop on this lap or the next lap for that to happen. The gap is just over 25 seconds between Wendlinger and Herbert. And Herbert is a lot quicker on the lap, but then I think Schumacher is at the end of lap 70, so starting his very last lap. 2.6 miles away from his third Grand Prix victory.
And a dominant display from Benetton Ford, from Michael Schumacher. Well, this morning I allowed Billy Weber, who's the team manager of Michael Schumacher, and almost like a father figure to him, said, "John, if it's dry, Michael will win this afternoon." He also said, by the way, if it rains, he expected Senna to win. Well, it's been a dry race. The sky has had cloud in it, but there's lots of blue as well now. And it looks like Billy Weber's prophecy, which I was a little bit skeptical of. I didn't believe that Schumacher could beat Senna in a Williams Renault here at Interlagos.
Michael Schumacher wins his third Grand Prix. If he gets to the line, but that'll be the debut victory for the Zetec R Ford engine, the most sophisticated V8 engine ever built by Cosworth, and I think ever built in the history of motor racing. So Michael Schumacher, a couple of corners away from that third victory, starting his 39th Grand Prix. Well, he's won 3, so the only thing he needs now is a pole position, because that's about the only thing he has not had yet. There he comes. This can't go wrong anymore. Michael Schumacher wins the Brazilian Grand Prix 1994. The Benetton team leads the World Championship. Schumacher leads the World Championship. Ford wins the first Grand Prix of the season. There we see second place finisher Damon Hill. Only accelerate uphill and you will be okay. Damon, 6 points go to the Williams team. 6 points go to Great Britain and Damon Hill. And now we're waiting for third, fourth, fifth and sixth. And especially sixth place is going to be interesting, because Carl Wendlinger coming round in a 1:26. So if he's going to make it, I think Wendlinger would take sixth position. If he's not going to make it, then it'll be Johnny Herbert. So that could be an interesting finish. Very good performance by Jean Alesi. I think third place is the best Ferrari could have hoped for.
I think they've done extremely well. Likewise, Barrichello and the Jordan reduced the gap down to 9.7 seconds. They had a bad qualifying both days. Had they been further up the grid, who knows who would have been on that podium.
Likewise, Ukio Katayama coming home in fifth position. Very good. The Tyrrell team, under the guidance of Harvey Postlethwaite. Yamaha engine in sixth position. Who is going to come? And I think it is Carl Wendlinger, who eventually finishes in sixth position in front of Johnny Herbert, who just misses out on a point.
Well, this victory today for Schumacher, Benetton Ford, first of all, I think it's a very popular victory within motor racing. I know it's too soon to say does one swallow make a summer, but this augurs for the rest of the season we're going to see a classic championship. Now, over the last 10 years, we have seen a stranglehold in Grand Prix racing, essentially between two teams. Over the last 2 or so seasons, Benetton have edged nearer and nearer to that domination we have seen from McLaren and Williams. And I'm wondering, I'm going to see 3 teams potentially contesting the 94 championship. Certainly Schumacher is ready to be a world champion. 15 more Grand Prix, that's a lot more racing and a lot more can take place. But there's one of the men that has masterminded the victory this afternoon, Flavio Briatore, commercial director of Benetton Formula.
There we see the top 6. It's gone through our screen. There we see position 7 to 12, and I've got to say, for David Brabham, well done to bring that Simtek home, and it's his best result in a Grand Prix so far for the Australian. But no doubt the winner, Michael Schumacher.
Well, Flavio blowing out a great victory. The man has achieved many things in his motor racing career in terms of management and the seeking and finding of sponsorship, vital. It's the lifeblood, in fact. Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill. Damon delighted, I'm sure, with the second place. Disappointed he wasn't able to be more competitive and to challenge Michael Schumacher when his teammate Ayrton Senna was, well, he spun out, and there we see joy on the face of, look at that man, barely any sweat at all. He is fit beyond belief. And now Jean Alesi in his Ferrari, and he will, I'm sure, be equally pleased with the performance after a difficult off-season testing with this new and somewhat radical Ferrari. And there you see the Brazilian Germans, and in fact I'm sure Germans that have travelled all the way to Brazil to follow Michael Schumacher, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and there may be a few with a bit of Austrian blood here supporting Gerhard Berger, Karl Wendlinger, and guest of ours this afternoon, Roland Ratzenberger.
We're waiting for the rostrum, and while we're waiting for that, I hope you don't forget to watch Eurosport on Wednesday when we look behind the scenes of the Brazilian Grand Prix in Eurosport Grand Prix magazine. The Drivers' Championship, of course, is the top 6 as it was in the race. And the Constructors' World Championships, or the Team Championship, as it says on our screen, well, surprise, surprise, that's the cars they've been driving. But on the rostrum, there is Michael Schumacher. To complete the list of finishers, Herbert in 7th, Martini in 8th, Gomez 9th, Lamy 10th, Panis 11th, and David Brabham in 12th. And he was 4 laps behind the winner, Michael Schumacher.
Well, conversation between Schumacher and John Alesi. Damon standing there in the traditional defiant stance that we have seen before. Not much of a smile on his face. And now Michael and Flavio, and that is a very special relationship. Schumacher delighted and happy to stay with the Benetton team even before this Grand Prix.
Well, Michael, you've done it fair and square. Beat Williams, beat Ayrton Senna. And I think there was a little tear coming from the eye, John.
I think this is the most poignant victory we've seen so far for Michael Schumacher, but there's another man with a little tear in his eye, Rubens Barrichello. His first 4th place and a very fine Grand Prix from Barrichello, and a good start from the Jordan team, who had a difficult year last year. Got a much nicer car, easier driven, good V10 power from Brian Hart, and they're going to be pushing as hard as the people on the very front will be throughout this year.
Jean Alesi on the right, receiving a trophy, and we are waiting for the champagne to be sprayed, and as far as I know, we're waiting for the press conference after the race and see what those 3 drivers thought about the 71 laps around Interlagos. Yes, they want a trophy, but I think, John, what they want more is that bottle of champagne.
Well, I can assure you, Schumacher, Hill and Alesi are going to give a champagne bath to everybody that's below the podium. The bottles of Moet Chandon. In fact, not bottles, those are, dare I say it, Jeroboams or Imperials. The sort of thing that anybody would love to have for a private dinner party. Flavio Getting it well and truly out of the way. Michael, quite happy. The first thing, of course, is champagne in eyes after a Grand Prix. It doesn't have smart.
But it's nice to be able to have champagne in your eyes.
Well, I have to say, Alan, it's nicer to have it trickling down your throat than in your eyes.
All right, Michael Schumacher, not only winner of this Grand Prix, also a new lap record, a 1:18.455. We'll be back with the press conference after the break here on Eurosport.
To the team, what they have done over the winter is crazy, and this is the result out of it. We just were better prepared for the first race than anybody else, and that was the reason why we won the race.
Ayrton was beginning to push you quite hard in the closing stages. There must have been a wry smile on your face when you saw that he was out. Did you feel under any danger at any time?
I really didn't feel danger because I could more or less control the pace. I could go away when I was alone and pushed a bit harder. I opened up the gap when I had traffic. It came a bit close, so there was no real danger at the time, except in the beginning when I didn't do a very good start and Joel was in front of me. I lost a bit of height, and that was the time I was afraid I lose too much, and by strategy we won't make up a position. So. But then I could come close to Ayrton during the time, and then I was quite keen that we could win this race. The strategy we have done this weekend was fantastic as well. There is a good relationship in this team, and everything runs so easy and smooth, and that's the result of this.
Now, under the new regulations, 2 fuel stops to light your fuel load in the car. Is the car more demanding to drive during the race?
Yeah, it makes certainly more fun compared to drive with 200 litres in the beginning and no fuel in the end. There's a very big difference, and this is what we have.
Turning to you, Damon. You must have settled for 3rd place, but 2nd is a real bonus and a good foundation for the championship to come.
Well, naturally, I'm disappointed for Ayrton, but pleased to have got a 2nd place and a good basis to start the championship from. I had a bad weekend, really. Lost a bit of time on the first day, and I never really found a setup I was happy with, and so I had to really take a bit of a gamble in the race. I made 1 stop, and I don't think it was the quickest way to go, but it was worth a try, and consistency and everything paid off, and I'm very, very pleased. And so thank you for Williams and Renault for supplying the equipment for that. And if I can continue in that vein, then I think that I look forward to the remainder of the season.
How surprised were you by the pace of the Benetton here?
Come on, say something.
I was not surprised so much. I'd seen how quick they were in testing, but I was surprised really to see how quickly both Ayrton and Michael went away at the start. Opened up a very big gap very quickly, and I knew that then there was going to be a difficult race.
Yeah, it must have been a bit of a shock to have found yourself being lapped around the 40-lap mark.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit demoralising, but I knew that the only thing I had to do was compete to get 3rd place, and to be honest, I inherited 2nd place, but I was there, and I'm very pleased.
Jean, you started brilliantly, which supported your qualifying, really, but from there it slipped away a little bit.
I was very worried for the race because I start with a T car. I had an engine problem on my race car 10 minutes before to go on a grid. So the car was quite competitive, but really difficult to control, especially on a bump. We have to work again, but my team and myself, we are quite happy to be in a 3rd position like that for the first Grand Prix. But we have a lot to do now to be on a level to Williams and compare Williams and Benetton.
From a race point of view, was there any apprehension as far as the fuel stops were concerned?
Well, we start with maybe less fuel at the beginning because we were very uncertain for the reliability of the engine. So the strategy was to do 18 laps at the beginning and then refueling. But I think it's very good now to have this opportunity, because everybody has a possibility to find a different strategy, and for the public it's better.
What about the factor of tyre wear during the race? I mean, you don't have traction control, no active suspension anymore. How did that affect the car?
It's very difficult to control, especially us with the 12 cylinders. We have a lot of power, but in the top end, so it's very difficult to keep the rear tires for the run.
Turning back to you, Michael, just a quick word. Pacific Grand Prix in 3 weeks' time. It's a track that I don't believe you've ever driven at, and I expect none of you have driven it. What are your thoughts and aspirations as far as Pacific Grand Prix is concerned?
That's exactly the point what you're saying. Nobody of us has driven there. Nobody even has been there. So to make an opinion about this is very difficult. In the moment, I saw the tape. Looked very interesting. I have to say something else, which appeared during the weekend to me. I have to say the public here is very great. They're very fair, and it was a pleasure for me to win here this race.
Well, congratulations to all three of you. Great result.
Thank you.
Yeah. Michael, a few words in German.
The match, the team had the match, and I cannot wait until April 17, the Pacific Grand Prix in Aida, to see this battle continue.
A sensational start to the Grand Prix season. John Watson, Allard Kalf, and the whole Eurosport team, thank you for watching today, and we'll see you again from Japan. Bye for now.